Well, this week on our ICF podcast series, I'm very, very excited to welcome the ICF's very first distance SUP World Champion. He's a multiple world champion, multiple European champion, multiple Australian stand-up paddling champion. He's also had a career in canoe sprint and done various other things. Michael Booth joining us all the way from Perth in Western Australia. Michael, great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's a pleasure to be involved with the ICF podcast.
How have you been, mate? We haven't seen you obviously since China when you won the World Championship. The world sort of turned on its head. We were lucky to get out of China when we were, really, weren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a crazy few months, I guess nearly half a year now since I raced over there in October and had that first World Championship win. But it's been just a crazy time. We had bushfires over here at the start of the year, and then I think it was like flooding, and then COVID crisis came and sort of shut everything down. And yeah, it's just been a very challenging time, I think, as probably most of the athletes would probably say. It's something that you can't plan for, whereas something, I guess, as athletes, we're normally used to like setting goals, setting training plans, setting, I don't know, travel and all that type of thing around a certain event. And now we're sort of sitting at home going, okay, so how do we train? What do we do? Like, what's next? You know? So I've just been taking it a bit easy, just, I guess, in a way, prolonging my paddling career as well, because I'm not on the grind again for another year. So I think it's the first year I've actually been in the same place for longer than 1 to 2 months, you know? So it's kind of a blessing in disguise to be able to have a bit of a relax and sort of take training a little bit less seriously, do some different sports. So I've got a foil now. I've got a foil wing. I'm doing some kayaking, actually. I've jumped back in with Ramen down at Waste and doing a couple of sessions there. And I've entered the Avon because it's probably the only race that we can do in the foreseeable future. And there's just so many different things that I'm trying to do at the moment. Started my own podcast and, you know, just trying to take the opportunities as they present themselves and just mixing things up in this time where we can't race and train.
Yeah, so actually I'll give a shout out to the podcast because they are really entertaining, and Michael manages to get a lot of really interesting guests on talking about all sorts of things to do with stand-up paddling and canoeing generally. You've had Sean Rice on there, of course, the South African ocean racing champion and an incredible athlete in itself. So if you go to Boothcast, that's what it's called, Boothcast, you'll find all of Michael's chats. So Michael, I mean, a lot of athletes that I've spoken to have said that emotionally the whole period has been a bit of a roller coaster, because some days, you know, you wake up and you realize that everything you've worked for and everything you're working for has all of a sudden been taken away. And then other days, like you say, you do see the new opportunities. What's it been like for you generally?
Well, I think if we wind back to March, I think it was when all of this really came down, especially here in Australia. It was sort of, I think we all thought it was just, I know, segregated to China at the start, and it wasn't going to come here. I went to Thailand and I went and did a test trip over there with Starboard, designing new race boards and sort of signing a few of those off with the team over there, and came back. And about 4 or 5 days later, like, the state border was closed here in Western Australia and you couldn't go in and out. And that's still the case now. We're sort of here in the middle of June. So it's been a very interesting time. I know, like, I sat down there probably on one of the Fridays and had a couple of beers and sort of sat on the couch and was like, okay, so what does this all look like now? Because I'd sort of spent all my time and my energy over the past, let's say, 15 years, probably the last 10 years more specifically, focusing on racing and focusing on being the best I can be and trying to commit to different opportunities and different races. And then all of a sudden it's like, we can't do any of those. And it's like, okay, so it sort of helps you define yourself in a way, because I guess a lot of athletes probably think that they define themselves on the way they race, their results, like their achievements, whereas there's so much more to what we do than just racing. So it was a nice sort of realization of that. It's like, okay, so maybe I can't get out there and try and be my best or be the best guy on the day, but I can do all these other things that can have a significant effect on other people. And I started doing some videos online and helping people through coaching and helping people through different forms and just sort of reconnecting with people through the podcast, which was really nice to hear people's different stories as well. And I think it's so relatable to each and every athlete out there. We all sort of race against each other, but we all have similar goals, similar aspirations, and similar ambitions that we want to actually achieve. So as hard as it was at the start, I think I sort of just sat down to myself and went, right, I can either sit here and feel sorry for myself, or I can seek new opportunities and get on with it. And that's what I've chosen to do instead.
And in terms of staying fit, staying race fit, which obviously for an athlete is incredibly important because you don't want to put yourself on the rack for too long. Was that easy for you to do?
Yes and no. So I'm used to doing a lot of training, a lot of miles, and getting out there and just, I don't know, I love that feeling of just grinding it out and having like that sort of, I don't know, milestones towards a certain goal. Whereas if you don't have that, it's hard to get out there and train. So what I've been trying to do is just whatever I feel like when I wake up in the morning to go out and do, I go and do that. So I think even this week I went foiling on Sunday, then Monday morning I went kayak training in the Avon boat, and then I went down with ramen at Waste, and then Tuesday morning I went SUP paddling, and then I went for a surf. So like I'm doing just different things just to keep myself fit. And I might go back to the gym tomorrow actually, which is kind of exciting. I never thought I'd miss the gym, but I kind of do now, which is awesome. So I'll head down to the gym again tomorrow. But yeah, I think, and the athletes that I coach as well, I'm just sort of telling them to just do the things that they're most interested in. We have sort of a schedule of like random training that we sort of do to keep fit, but we're not targeting anything just yet. But now here in Australia, we can start targeting events like, I don't know, the Australian Ocean Racing Series on the surf ski, the Shore and Partners Race Week. These are sort of starting to become a reality now. We launched it last Wednesday on the Boothcast actually, and that was a really cool thing to sort of see all the athletes get really excited for events again. And there's so much energy, and I think there's going to be a lot of people doing that. I think Paddle Australia even just announced their 2021 calendar over summer. So there is things that we can start planning for. Just may not be what we're used to. Like I may not be able to go overseas and race this year. Like there's a lot of events asking me at the moment, can you come over? I'm like, well, not if I have to do 14 days there and 14 days here, because there's just no point. So it's just a bit of a waiting game, but it feels like we're starting to come over that other side of that hill.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you said at the start, Michael, that this has prolonged your career. Has it given you cause to rethink about your long-term goals and about what you want to do? Is that something which you've spent any time contemplating?
Well, I think over the past few years, I've definitely chased a lot of events and tried to prove myself consistently over Euro Tours or APP World Tours or ICF or the ISA World Titles or whatever I guess the community is thinking is the most significant event at the time. Whereas now, as I've gotten a bit older, it's like, okay, so maybe I can't maintain that level of racing week in, week out and traveling to different places. Like, is there a different stage of my life I want to move into? And what I've realized in this period is like, I do really love to race. I really do love to go out to different events and meet people and hang out with them. So I think that's something that I wanted to do more. Whereas coming into the start of this year and even the start of last year, it was quite challenging to get started again. I was sitting there going, okay, maybe I don't really want to do this. Maybe I want to do something else, you know, like, cause it's just a lot of time training and racing, like competing against yourself and others. And then finally you want to sit back and go, okay, now I actually really want to do this. I want to keep it going. But because I've had this break, I think I'll do it more.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing we can say about you, Michael, is you've always been willing to take on new ventures and try different things. And obviously this lockdown and the change that everyone's had has given you wonderful opportunities to do lots of things. I did read an article the other day saying that one of the sports that has actually really taken off during lockdown is stand-up paddling, because you can get out there by yourself. You don't have to worry about 2 meters, being 2 meters apart, and there's a talk that it's going to be something which will even grow even more than it has done in recent times. Do you feel that? Are you seeing that? Are you hearing that within the sport?
Well, it's been exciting seeing, I guess, the growth of stand-up in general over the past few years. But now, obviously, people are starting to really realize that what is important in life. And I think people are really starting to go, okay, well, maybe I do want to get out in the ocean. Maybe I do want to try that sport. And stand-up paddling is something that's really accessible to everybody. There's very few sports where you can just like walk out onto the water and stand on the board, put a paddle in your hand and move forward, and all of a sudden you're a stand-up paddler. Like, you don't really have that opportunity in, say, I don't know, canoe or kayak or even surf ski. Like, it's a bit more of a learned skill, whereas stand-up is like you're kind of standing on, for lack of a better example, standing on like a door for those listening. It's like you're standing on a big plank, like a boat mooring essentially, or something like that, and you're pushing that along through the water. But obviously they get skinnier and faster and better and all that type of thing, but it's a sport that's really accessible to the masses. And I think that's what we're really seeing. And I'm in a few UK stand-up groups, and I'm really seeing a lot of new people going, okay, I'm buying a SUP. Which SUP do I buy? That type of thing. And the SUP company over there, I know Tony really well, and I think I've seen a lot of posting from those guys. So I think, yeah, stand-up paddling is going to take off again, which is kind of exciting. And I think that was something that I thought was going to happen earlier on in the piece. I remember speaking to Danny Ching about this, probably in one of my first podcasts, and he was saying how I just think that the sport will grow again because of this down period, because everyone sort of becomes complacent with what's around them sometimes, and what they really love to do is like, stand-up paddling's been around for 8 years, it's kind of boring now, but it's like, okay, now actually, I really like that. I'm not allowed to do that for 80 days or 90 days. And now I really want to get back out onto the water. So I think that's happening in all water sports, in all sports in general. So it's exciting that leisure and activities is going to have another boom, but hopefully the tourism side of things can turn around as well.
Do you think, Michael, it would be a good fit on the Olympic program? Do you think it would? I mean, it's global. We know it's global. We saw in China people from all over the world were there, and we know there are parts of the world where it's stronger than other parts, but it is taking off. Do you think it would be a good fit on the Olympic program?
Well, absolutely. I think stand-up paddling deserves a place on the Olympic stage. It's one of the most I guess participated in water sports in the world. You know, like there's no worry about how many nations are competing, because every nation does stand up paddling, like whether it's a recreational level, whether it's in the lakes, the rivers, the oceans, no matter what continent you're on, you can pretty much find a stand up paddleboard now, which is pretty special. And yeah, it definitely deserves a place. And I guess that's up to the federations to sort their stuff out, I guess, and try and get this sport moving forward instead of getting locked up in courtrooms.
And the point you made there is a good one about the accessibility. You can do it, on Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra. You can do it on the Thames in London. You can do it off Cottesloe Beach in Perth. You know, the Swan River. There's anywhere where there's water, you can get out there and do it, which gives it that uniqueness, which a lot of other water sports obviously don't enjoy. And really, for a lot of host cities for Olympic Games, as long as you've got a little bit of water around, you can have a stand-up paddling event.
Well, yeah, you can do a stand-up paddling race wherever, like whether it's you can do it on the WSL, really, like in the lay days on the WSL, you know, like as long as there's water and there's a couple of boards and the paddles and some willing paddlers, like you can have an event. And that's something that's really special about stand-up paddling, like whether it's a 200-meter sprint down the race course, or whether it's an 18-kilometer distance race, or a technical course, or whatever. Like there's no real limits to stand-up paddling. There's just so many opportunities, and there's so many willing athletes out there who are participating in it. And what's the beauty, I think, of stand-up paddling as well is there's such a community participation. Like you see that the most raced in age groups, or the most participation that you see, are in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, like these athletes who are much older, and they just love getting out on their boards, and they love training with their friends, and sometimes they go to races, but most of them probably don't go to the races, you know. So it's a fitness, it's sort of a leisure activity, it's a fitness activity as well. It's like kind of like going to the gym. You're not going to have a harder paddle workout than probably what you can get on a stand-up, because it is such a total body exercise, and that's something that's really special. And I think people just love being out on the water, and there's also that connection with sort of standing on the water and feeling like people are surfing, you know, like they're sort of standing up and like they're looking around. And but it's also mainly a paddling sport, because you use the paddle to propel yourself forward. So there's so many different things you can do on it, and it's just an awesome sport to be a part of. And it's given me so many opportunities for racing. I guess, as you say, racing the Doctor from Perth back to from Rottnest back to Perth, or traveling over to America and racing in the Gorge, you know, or doing the Carolina Cup in North Carolina, or going over to racing on the Thames, or racing in the middle of Paris, you know, like or racing in a pool. Like there's all these different opportunities that you can do, and there's no limits. It's fantastic.
Listening to you, Michael, it does sound like you're living the dream. But as an elite athlete, do you also make sacrifices? Are there things in your life that you've had to miss out on, or give up on, or maybe not devote as much time as you should do to it to be a successful international athlete?
Well, I used to say yes, but I recently spoke to Ivan Lawler, who sort of put it to me in the way that, are we really sacrificing because each day we get to get up and do what we like to do? And I get to get up every day and go for a paddle, or go surfing, or go training with my friends, or traveling normally to beautiful places and see amazing people, and making a sacrifice there? Absolutely not, because that's what I want to do. That's my passion. That's what I love to compete in, whether it was kayak or whether it was surf lifesaving, surf ski, and now stand up. There's all these different things that I want to do. But when you go back to sacrifices, of course there are sacrifices. You look at, I moved away from my family at 18. I moved to the Gold Coast to chase an Ironman dream initially, and then the surf ski thing came up, and I had to make financial sacrifices and be able to travel with that. So, and I was living off nothing. I was like hoping to get to a race and make enough prize money to pay for my accommodation, you know, like that type of thing. And that was the sacrifice I was making. But the sacrifice was for the experience, and the experience has always been the main focal point of anything that I've done. It's like, if I get the experience out of something, that's the main reward. The result is great, but the experience is something that I'm going to look back on and be able to tell stories to my kids or to people around me or to my supporters. And that's something that's really important. But also, I guess, sacrificing moving to where I need to be for different events, like not being able to stay at home, you know, like I travel probably 7 to 8 months of the year. Normally, most amount of time I spend in one place is about 3 weeks. So it's a lot of sacrifice, but a lot of non-sacrifice, because it's something that I want to be doing. So I'm lucky to be able to, as you say, living my dream. And my dream was always to be able to travel, to race, and to make a living. And I'm lucky to be able to be doing that right now.
You probably haven't had a winter for a few years. Not that the Perth winter is anything to be scared of. It's compared to European winter, a Perth winter is very mild. But you probably haven't had a winter for ages, have you, Michael?
No, it was actually funny thinking about that when I was here, because everyone was like, I was like, I'm not normally here for winter, so I don't know what it's like, you know? So I'd usually come back from my European stint and maybe spend 2 weeks here, like drop my stuff, unpack, repack, and then go over to Hawaii or something like that and do the downwind season over there. But it's okay. Like you just get used to it being a little bit colder, but Australian winters aren't probably as bad as European winters. So I did get the opportunity to go up to Lapland and Finland and go to Stockholm in Sweden and Paris, obviously in December last year. So that was more the type of winter that I guess you're used to. But if you got the right clothes and you're wearing the right materials, like that won't get lower than probably 6 degrees here in winter. And you might have a few rainstorms and a bit of ugly weather, but there's always opportunities in that too. You can go surfing at novelty breaks down south, like I did recently at like Bunker Bay and Eagle Bay and these type of beautiful picturesque places. But you got the wind from the north coming in, and there's 7 meters of swell, so you can get into those really tiny bays. So it's just, there's always opportunities in different problems, I guess.
You're making me feel very homesick. Michael,
Yeah.
where do you hope to be in, say, 20 years' time? What do you hope to be doing? Where do you hope to be?
Well, I hope to be still involved in paddling in some way. I'm sure I'll have a wife and kids at that stage. I'm sure I will be still, as I say, involved in some type of paddling, maybe have some sort of professional job as well. Hopefully still coaching people and enjoying the water sports environment. I don't think I'll ever retire from paddling. I think a lot of people say that these days. You don't really retire from a sport. You sort of just keep doing it forever. So I'm sure I'll step back from racing at some stage, but if I can follow in Hank McGregor's footsteps, I can keep going for another 15 years. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, you've been pretty fortunate, haven't you, injury-wise? Your body has held up pretty well so far. I mean, you're still young, obviously, but your body's held up pretty well.
Yeah, I'm 29 now. I haven't had too many major injuries, but that's something that I guess I've learned over time to be able to deal with and make sure that I'm listening to my body at all times. I know as I was younger, I had a few stress fractures. I had osgood-Schlatter, like when I was 14 to 16, just like that, those growing type injuries. I had a stress fracture in my leg, training for a Nutrigrain Ironman trial 1 year, and I ended up cracking my whole shin. And that was probably my last major injury, but that major injury sort of sat me in an ocean ski for the first time, and I went paddling with Jeremy Cotter, and that sort of brought a whole new world into my life. And that's why I started actually kayaking as well, to get better at ocean ski paddling. And then I started the kayaking stuff. And then my only other injury was probably, I got like a tear in my left arm just before the nationals, actually, before I made my first senior team, going to Moscow in 2014. And I didn't actually train for 2 weeks before it. And then I finished 5th in the 1,000 in the Australian nationals. And that was sort of my best results. So I was like, maybe I don't need to train. But after that sort of kayaking period, I became my own coach, and I just really listen to my body now. The only injury I've had is I had a tear in my what do you call it, intercostal muscle from sprinting at a photo shoot of all things, and that was dumb mistake. Yeah, I was over with Starboard in Thailand and doing a photo shoot of one of the bays down there. And I just would start sprinting, no warm up. And I hadn't been training because it was off season, and yeah, just tore my intercostal muscle. So on my left hand side, but so I was still able to paddle my right, which was one of those things. But yeah, there was just always body management and pain management. I haven't really been injured when I'm overseas racing though, which has been nice. Like over the past 4 or 5 years, I haven't had any injuries significantly affect my preparation in any race.
Yeah, important to always stretch. And Michael, just looking at you now, you're surrounded by the names of a lot of your supporters and sponsors, which I'm sure makes things a lot easier for you, because as a paddler in itself, it's probably hard to make enough money just through prize money to keep everything going. I mean, when you're on tour and talking to other athletes and that, some of them obviously make enormous sacrifices and find it really tough. How much easier is it for you, because you have obviously got really good, strong support from a lot of people and a lot of supporters and sponsors?
Well, I guess I would say to them that it wasn't always this way.
No.
I guess I could take you back a few years to when I was studying engineering at university, and I was still trying to be an Ironman. And at that stage, I was earning maybe $20,000 a year working in a bar at North Cliff Surf Club. And I thought that was a better career choice for me, and trying to be an Ironman or whatever it was at the time and chase my passions than actually go into engineering and work in a box and work for the man. Like, that was my decision that I made. Went on, finished my business degree online. But I think I've only really had really supportive sponsors. Well, a lot of these guys have been around for a long time, but to the level that I'm getting now, it probably only been for the last 3 to 4, 5 years now that I've had great partnerships. But a lot of these guys who are on this billboard behind me have been with me for 10 years, so they start small, and you sort of be able to work with partnerships with each and every brand, and you sort of work out what value you can bring to them as much as they can bring to you. And it sort of becomes a relationship where they're part of your journey, and you just really enjoy sharing your moments with them. Like, I know Earl Evans from Shore Partners would text me. I finished a race in Paris, and I won the race competing against Nick and Jude to the finish line. And he texted me like, "Oh, that was awesome. Like, how good was that?" And it'd be like 9 p.m. 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. in Sydney, and I'd be just finishing like I don't know, presentations or something like that, and you'd have a text like that come through, or having emails from Sven from Starboard, or Chris from VMG. I've worked with him from day dot when I started stand-up paddling, and I've been with Vycobi for 8 years, and now have my own brand and that type of thing. So it's just a really, I guess it's a partnership and a journey together, and that's something that I've been able to work towards. But I guess with other athletes, I always try and lead by example as well. I make sure that I give my sponsors value. I try and help other athletes as well. Like, if they need help with their sponsorship arrangements, or trying to make sure that they can get what they need to get to where they want to be, because at the end of the day, you aren't anything without your competition. You need your competitors to make your result mean something. Because if I turn up to a race and there's no one there, it doesn't mean anything to me, because you don't get to race the best guys. And if the best guys need help to get to where they need to be, then that's something that I try and help with.
Does it give you a big advantage over a lot of your competitors that you've got that support off the water to make sure that you can focus as much as you do on your career?
Yes, absolutely. I think any advantage that you can gain, like whether it's being with the best brand that I think is possible. Like, I remember emailing Starboard at the start of our like stand-up paddling, when I started taking it seriously back in 2016, and sort of sold myself on the idea that I could be good. And eventually I've sort of got there, and that's something that I had to do at the beginning. But then I only did that because I thought they had the best boards. So as much as the sponsors try and get the best athletes on board, the best athletes need to be with the best companies to be able to do what they need to do. So absolutely, it's an advantage to have any of these guys on this billboard behind me with me, because it gives you sort of a bit of a purpose as well. Like, not only are you racing for yourself, you're racing for your supporters who are out there sort of help you, but then you're racing for your sponsors, which are getting their own value out of it. Whether that's they really just enjoy you seeing you do well, or they enjoy seeing you perform and see their brand in front, and that's something that they can tell their staff, or still tell their team members that you know, someone like Ocean Paddlers winning, or Sean Partners is winning at these different events. So yeah, that's something that's really important to me. And then you've got your friends and family who sort of stick by you no matter what. And there's just all these different people you're racing for. So when you get on the start line, it's not only just you're racing for this like team, like you sort of like, it's like one of those ghosting images, like you're there, but there's like 50 people around you who've got you to that point, and you got to, and then when I'm racing, I try and make sure that I'm thinking about what it means to those people as well, not just to myself.
And you mentioned you've set up your own brand. Tell me a little bit about the thinking behind that.
Yeah, so I've been working on that for a few years now. I guess it originally started with training by Boothie. So people were asking me to, as I was my own coach, basically as soon as I finished the kayaking stuff back in 14, I started to coach myself, and there was people asking me to, can I train them? And that was the stand up and ocean ski. And I was like, yeah, of course. I've always said, I've been a guy who's always said yes to everything, and then learnt along the way. Obviously, I had a lot of knowledge from different coaches like throughout my career, and I've been very lucky to be sort of supported by amazing coaches like Anders Gustafsson was one of my coaches. I was down north with Barry Newman and Pat O'Keefe, and I trained under Jimmy Owens and all these different coaches. And whether I worked well with them at the time or not, you have those learnings from them, and you have all that knowledge, and people want that. People are asking for that. So you're sort of giving a little bit back the same way that those guys were giving back to us athletes. And that's how it all started. And then collaboration with Booth Times by Kobe with like a range of like paddling apparel and that type of thing. And then MB Paddles is something that we've worked on with Gara Paddles for the past 2 or 3 years now. So yeah, just trying to put my name to things that I really support. And like I have a say in like the designs and that type of thing as well. So I'm designing boards with Starboard now. Like I have a lot of say in what I get to race on, which is, I guess, is really important for me. And there's just so many different opportunities out there that we can chase. And the idea behind the brand is just to sort of show what I am. Like my brand, I guess, bases around determination, passion, pride, enthusiasm, and just being the best you can be every day. So that's what I want to represent, and that's what the brand sort of shows. And it's nice to see people who resonate with that brand. And now it's like the Boothcast as well, and there's all these different things that come off. I guess it's just me at the end of the day. It's just what I represent, and it's just awesome to think that other people resonate with that and want to be a part of it.
I certainly get the feeling that there are maybe not enough hours in the day, Michael, for you to achieve everything that you want to achieve every day. So I don't know.
There is not.
No, I don't know whether I should bother asking you what you do to wind down and relax, because I mean, what you're doing sounds like it keeps you pretty level-headed and relaxed anyway.
Yeah, I was always the guy who got the all-rounder award at school. So I guess I'm still like fulfilling that prophecy, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I guess I wake up in the morning, go paddling, and then I'm doing emails. I always go to a coffee shop in the morning. I love doing that and do my emails and try and connect with as many people as I can. I think you're sort of having that connection with different people around the place and is really important to me. And I really enjoy that sort of interaction. And then winding down, I guess it doesn't really happen till like the end of the night. So whether especially if I'm doing the podcasting stuff and the training and trying to like make sure all the stuff with the businesses are going well, and then trying to obviously coach athletes. Like I coach a lot of athletes, so I make sure that they're going well and they're keeping to their plan. But then hopefully after 7 or 8 p.m. at night, I can sort of watch some TV and go to bed, and then wake up the next day and do the whole thing again. But I'm very lucky to be able to chase just different things as well. Like I've always been lucky if there's a good swell down south, or I want to go do this paddling event, or I want to go do this, I'm just like, okay, well, let's go and do it. Like I never really have to go, okay, I can't do that because of these things. I just moved my laptop to where I'm going, and everything still works exactly the same. So it's a very fortunate position I'm in, but something that I've worked hard to be in.
Well, it's been great catching up with you, Michael. You sound like you're doing really, really well. We're looking forward to seeing you back on the water. As you say, I don't know when we'll see you in an international race or outside of Australia, but hopefully before the end of the year, but hopefully early next year at the latest. As I mentioned, if you want to hear more from Michael and listen to some of his much better interviewing skills than mine, Boothcast is his podcast, and also there's a heap of information on his webpage about his career and stuff you can do. And if you want to get inspired, and I'm sure Michael would be very happy for you to take on one of his training exercises, he'd be very keen to do that. Great to talk to you, Michael. All the best, mate. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully, as I said, we'll see you out on the water again soon.
I'm sure it will. Thank you for this afternoon.